This episode is brought to you by the CityCX newsletter, a new tool for strategies and a guide for cities to connect better with residents. Subscribe now at citycx.info. Oh, hi, I'm Dana Berchman. Welcome to Oh Hi Stories. In this episode, Kristy Dalton walks us through her unexpected path from deputy clerk to digital pioneer and founder of the government social media conference. Kristy shares how embracing authenticity helped build trust and engagement long before it became the norm. Now, as the force behind a national network of public sector communicators, she's creating space for the conversations and support this work demands. This episode is about more than social media. It's about building community, being brave enough to try something new, and understanding the real impact of showing up online when it matters most. Kristy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm so happy to have you. I feel like our paths have run parallel for a decade, and to finally get a chance to sit down, meet you, and talk with you about all of the amazing work that you do in social media in the government space and the business you've built as a new entrepreneur. I definitely am looking to someone like you for a lot of advice and help. Congratulations on all of your success. And I know this isn't going into busy season for you, but tell me a little bit about you and how you got here. And then we'll get to talking about what you've built.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I'm very excited about it as well. I actually got my start in government at a deputy clerk's office in Illinois. I was actually a deputy clerk. And so I was the keeper of the record part-time while I was going to school and I was in college. And then that transitioned as I started to study communications. I became a PR folk. I became, what was my official job title? They were all in the communications space in some respect. And when I got my job for the city of Reno, Nevada, I was hired to be an e-public information officer. This was back in 2006. So the E stood for electronic. And
oh, wow.
Yes, this was back in the day. So the electronic public information officer. My job was essentially the intranet, the public-facing website, and digital and everything in between. So in about 2008, my boss, Kevin Knutson, came into my office and he said, I think that we should get the city of Reno on Twitter and on Facebook. And my response was, why? No one wants to hear from the city of Reno on social media. I think it was shortly after Walmart just unveiled their page on Facebook. And I was just thinking, it's cringy. No one wants to hear about it. That was the start to everything.
2008, I know exactly where I was. I was a news writer for an old school reporter at MSNBC, Andrea Mitchell, and we did the same thing in that industry, right? Not in government, but she was wanting to still tell stories with a pen and paper. And we were like, you need to be using social media. Yeah. You need to be blogging. She did not have a Twitter account. And so we started her Twitter account. So we were running parallel lives in that space too. It was the same thing. Who's going to manage it? Who does anyone care? Obviously not knowing, we were probably ahead of our time, right? You were too, especially in the government space. When you said 2006 EPIO type work, I'm like, hey, that's impressive, actually. That might have been a lot of foresight there because who would have thought, right? So you had this resistance to getting on Twitter originally. And then what did you discover when you embraced it or maybe were forced into it? What did you find?
Oh, that's a really good question because when we first started off, I created the profiles and I still did not quite get it. To me, this was just another duty as assigned. I had all the important website work to do and the team that I was building for that cross-departmentally so that we could have content published on the website and on the internet. This was just another extra thing I had to deal with. But for me, it was when I first started realizing the type of social media content that really resonated with my community, the city of Reno. And it was humor. And the very first time where I put something on social that wasn't just show up to this public meeting or here's our street sweeping schedule or something like that. We have this big annual festival here in Reno, the Great Reno Balloon Race. And that particular year, I think it had to be in 2008. I went to the festival and they were unveiling this Darth Vader balloon. It was this huge hot air balloon with the head of Darth Vader. So I took a photo of it and I was like, can I post this on Reno in Space? I was like, it's a Reno thing. Let's do it. I published it. And it's such a simple thing, but everybody started embracing it and engaging with it because it was endearing. They were talking about bringing their families to the event and It was fun and funny. So there was that one bit. And then there was this other memory that I have where I really realized, okay, people are starting to connect with it because it's a little bit different than you would expect from a government agency. And that's, we had this tree lighting ceremony every year for the holidays. And so this particular holiday, we had the tree lighting ceremony right outside of City Hall. Huge tree. And everybody noticed that year it was a little bit crooked. And so for some reason, I guess it was a slow news cycle all over the news, all over just public conversation was how the city of Reno, of course, has this crooked Christmas tree. And it was pretty funny. Yeah. And then I was thinking, how could I lean into that? Because I know everybody's talking about it right now. And then we had a holiday work party and some of the public works guys went in the fake Christmas tree. They bent the top of it so it was crooked so we could have a laugh during the employee party. So I snapped a photo and posted that, and people just really engaged with it because it was different. It's definitely not what other government agencies were doing at the time.
For sure. I totally get that and love that. And it was real, right? It was a moment of realness, which I think we struggle to find, especially when communicating and when government communicates. They just don't always do it in a way that will resonate with residents. The way that we laugh at things online. I always say government isn't an exception to how the world works and how we communicate. And I believe that. And so there's just not many people in this space that get that understand the power when you do get something like that to land with your residents, with your viewers, your customers, whatever it is. And so you really took advantage of that. So tell me how you grew that following from there and then into what you run, which is the Government Social Media Conference, which is amazing. And you bring people from all over together, and something that my teams participated in for many years and still do. So talk to me about how you grew the following and then how it led to your business.
Oh, that's great. Let's see. So that was, again, early 2008. And then we started experimenting a little bit more. And what I realized was there were a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges with social, but I had nobody to talk to about it. The other entities around me hadn't quite dipped their toe into it yet. We were definitely very early on with using that conversational type tone. At that time, the city of Reno started to get so many different followers on Facebook. I think we had 14,000 at the same time where the city of Las Vegas had about 700. So It was definitely something that was really taking off. And you would see maybe sprinkled in here and there one session at a government conference that was dedicated to social media. And first of all, it started off at like webmaster conferences and technical conferences, and then morphed into the communications conferences as well that I started going to. So you would see one session, and then you might see years later a track just dedicated to social media, but there really wasn't the space to start talking about and sharing those lessons learned. I realized that became very powerful in 2011. In 2011, here in the city of Reno, we had a major fire, a wildfire, the Colin fire. We had to evacuate 10,000 residents, and it was my first ever experience in the EOC, in the Emergency Operations Center. And once everyone at the EOC realized that I was the person that could get messages immediately out to the public that we had to evacuate. And then once that location became consumed by the fire, we had to tell them, or became in danger by the fire, we had to tell them where next to evacuate to, and so many different critical messages. And I realized, this is why we do it. Why we have connections on the blue sky days, so that we have this huge audience that we can reach instantly during those crises.
Absolutely.
That was one of the reasons why I really felt it was very important to establish a community of social media professionals. All the folks who wear other hats as well. It's not typically the social media manager who's handling these profiles, but and start getting them together. I had always wanted to have a major conference where we could bring people from all across the country together. And I just decided it was time to make it happen. I left my job in government, did a little bit of consulting for a while, and then just decided this is time to make it happen. I started planning it in 2014. And to be honest, what I did was I made a little brochure in Photoshop and I slapped some pictures of some of my friends in the space. And I asked them, some folks that had some incredible social media and government stories to share. I asked them if they would come and be on the steering committee and be a part of this. And we held the event, and first time we had 365 people show up. And I realized, wow, they just had 5 months notice that this event even existed. And
Yeah.
here they are. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember that actually. And I believe I sent team members to your first event because I started in my work in government in 2012. So it was right before that. And it was the same kind of thing. I started with nothing, a clean slate. We did not have anything, no Twitter. We were the only mayor, I think, that wasn't using social media. And one point you made that I think is so critical, which still surprised me and still surprises me about city work and communications, is what you mentioned about when the emergency strikes. And I think we saw this in the pandemic, where I thought at this point, 2020, we should be further along, but there were still mayors of major American cities who were not using social media to communicate. I was contacted by a large city mayor who said, I'm not on these channels. Like, I can't get my message out. How am I going to do this? And it was like, you can't start now. You are so late to the game. You needed to be building this following. We built a following. Our city had 200,000 people, and we built a following of 500,000, 500,000 on social. And I used to always say, we're not just talking to our residents, we're selling this community. And there's a lot of nuance to how you do that on all of the channels. You and I both know when we started this work in 2008, it wasn't that complicated to figure out how to use just Twitter, or maybe easier when we were on just Facebook. But with the influx of all the different channels and with video and using it in different ways, it's become such complicated work and it's hard. And I just told the story recently about how when I asked for a social media position, the first one, I was asked by an elected official in a public meeting, what's this person going to do? Just sit on Twitter all day? And it was like, yeah. And that's not an easy job. And it's 24/7. This is not 9 to 5 work. Like, it doesn't just happen when you're at your desk. And people just really, even still to this day, I would argue, don't understand how complicated, difficult, challenging, and especially with how the world has changed. I'd love to hear from you where you talked about the fun, the laughter, using humor, making a joke. All of that was where we really leaned into that space, I think, for so many years. And now that kind of came back flooding with negativity, and there's so many people that are so angry, and you really tend to only hear from people that have a grievance versus the people that love what you're doing. And so talk to me about how the world and the tone have changed this work. And I know you see it on the front lines when cities are coming to you and people working within the cities for help and advice and guidance. What do you see and burnout and how exhausting this work is? I always say sometimes it was like the monster we built that then we had to learn to manage, right? You build all these channels, you build this following, and then you're like, the disaster strikes or a pandemic comes or something happens, a crisis, and you're like, whoa, now you have to be able to manage those conversations in that two-way relationship. And it's hard work.
Oh, absolutely. Everything that you're saying there is spot on. And I, for a long time, really admired your community for the things that you were doing on social. So it's definitely something that a lot of folks saw outside of your city borders. what you mentioned about the evolution of social, yeah, it's definitely very interesting for the person who is the practitioner, the person who is the social media professional. And I alluded to before that it's not the social media manager. Just by title, we've found it's slowly ticked up, but right about now, from our perspective, we've seen about 10% of the people who are managing social or government agencies actually even have the word social media in their title. Typically, it's public communications or marketing or PIO or public affairs at the federal space, but they're mostly other duties as assigned. It's interesting the stress levels of the position. We've certainly seen it spikes with every major fear in the public's mind. And so we've seen for 2020, certainly that was a very difficult time for social media professionals, for sure, for all government professionals, but for social media, those are the folks who are on the front line. They're what electeds and leadership don't really realize is how much is filtered and how much of a barrier they are to the floodgates of all of this negative public sentiment. And the really good social media professionals are the ones that are able to capture that and channel it and report it back so that it's being received and used to make some really good database decisions. But it's very difficult. And as of earlier this year, I think we had our meetups in the first quarter of this year, we started hearing conversations again about how people are angrier on social. They're more polarized. They're seeing a lot more. What happens during these times is you see a lot more comments that are completely unrelated to the content that you're putting out there, but they're things that the public is getting off of their chest. And so they have to deal with this. As far as the fun side and that type of communications on social and where that has a place during the difficult times is, again, I do think it's important to have grown that audience during the happy times so that during the more challenging communications aspects of social during these times, you have that audience there. And the social media professional with the experience and the training and the critical thinking skills that they've worked to create over time, those are going to be the ones who manage the best during those times because they know when, they can read the room. They have that sense to where, okay, we're going to tone down these types of messages. And instead of the fun and slapstick humor, maybe we focus more on authenticity and the people and the human side and telling stories. And maybe that's the technique that's going to work better, right?
Yes, I love that. I think about that a lot in the work that I do still in the government sector a lot, and cities saying, we're doing all these cool things, but we're having trouble telling our story. We don't know how to get it out into the masses. And again, back to my point, even with so many people still being far behind in this space, I think people really do struggle with, there are so many platforms, there's things changing every day, and now your video needs to be vertical and it needs to be a reel. And a lot of times in the government space, you don't have people with the right skill sets either. You mentioned the title, but also the skill set, right, to do this kind of work. And I'm a big proponent of attracting people to the government space, to these types of jobs with these skill sets. Professional marketers, you came from the government space too prior, but I came from a TV world where I had these skill sets and knew how to do storytelling and documentary and social media engagement and all of those digital pieces and infused them into the government space. And that's what I'm really focused on, is bringing people from those other worlds in to using, either upskilling the people that you have to do this work, because it is hard. And like you said, government agencies are lean. They don't often have the depth to have people with these titles, but they do often give people the title or try to have them do this type of work. And it is not easy. And so talk to me about the conference growing, because I know you said 375 at the first. So where are we today? And talk about what you do in that space, because I know you bring the best of the best together. But what is it that people can learn from you about doing this well, doing this right, and what they learn from others within this community that you've built?
That's one of the interesting things is that you mentioned not everyone has the right skill set coming from government, or you might be able to handpick them from different backgrounds. And everyone makes mistakes in terms of what's going to resonate and what's not. And how do you get the skills? And one of the beautiful things about having a community of other people who are doing this is that they can be your test for, okay, does this sound quite right? Do you think that this leans a little bit too far into this area that we don't want to go into? Do you think that capitalizing on this trend is too late? It already came out 2 weeks ago. Or do you find this humorous or don't you? And just that looking critically at the posts is really helpful. And if you don't have that community and you don't have coworkers or colleagues who have those sensibilities because they're not thinking of this type of framework, then it's very difficult.
Yeah.
I knew that I was never going to be the person who knew everything about social media, the social media maven who was on every platform and knows every nuance. But I'm really passionate about bringing the right people in the room. And I truly believe if you bring the right people together, that some really good magic can happen. So with our event that we put together, we're upwards of 1,000 now. One of the things that we do differently with the government social media conference is that it's a hybrid event as well. So we also live stream every session. I felt that, especially since 2020, and that was really the trigger for this, for figuring out how all of this works. The hybrid side of it is if you can't make it, you should still be able to participate in it. I know that a lot of events since 2020 have completely turned off the hybrid side of it. It's difficult. It's running 2 events at a time. But we want to make sure that everybody, and we'll have hundreds and hundreds more online who are participating as well. But the idea is, and outside of this event, is get involved in a community in some way for any type of expertise, but particularly for those that are communications focused and just so nuanced. And if you use AI to generate social media posts, it can look like great social media content, but it can also really not be great social media content. You need to have that eye for critically looking at this for, is it going to resonate? Do I know my community? And a lot of times other folks can help you get there because they've gone through those hurdles before. So I can't speak enough about bringing a community together and seeing what happened. Also, the professional associations, I think, are really valuable for this field. And there's a lot of them that are great out there, the 3CMA and the TAMIO and CAPIOs, and we love all of those. We also have our professional association, GISMA, the Government Social Media Association. And we have over 600 members around the country. And they're folks that just really want to up-level their skills on social and collaborate together.
I love it. I love it. I think you make so many great points about community and networking and bringing people together to build this and to lean on. I think when I was early in that space, that's where I really struggled to find other people that were doing this work. And we got lucky out of the gate with a Justin Timberlake retweet, which doesn't happen every day. And I talk about this too. We had a digital state of the town that was hosted by a mayor. Not every mayor is going to be great on camera. So what works for one city isn't going to work necessarily for the next. So not even what platforms, but also messaging, like you said, understanding what your residents want, meeting them where they are, going to them, asking them what they want. That's the other thing that I think people miss about social media is that it's not just pushing out information. It's this two-way relationship you're building, and you have this opportunity to survey and ask people what they want and then use it, like you said, data-driven to drive service delivery and create those insights. And there's such power in that for cities. I remember I gave a Data 101 lunchtime talk, and it was about, did you know a like on social media is data, right? And so understanding the power in what people are telling you on these platforms too, and bringing that all together. And so I think there's some cities that do this really well, and then there's others that just don't. So I love this space. And I think you're right about the way the world has shifted and anxiety and fear driving from that place. I know that for me in particular, we were very active on social media. And then post-pandemic world, it was like, maybe we need to slow down, maybe we need to pull back. And I think a lot of that was, are we just afraid of what people are going to say? Or is it really the right thing to do? And there's a hard balance to strike with that, right? There's obviously going to be information that's vital that you're always going to have to share. But then, like you said, it's understanding and knowing what is the right time, what is the right message, where does that belong? And then also stopping doing things that don't work. And like you said, it's not always going to work. Being okay to try things and fail. I think that's a lot what you don't see in the city space either. And I think there needs to be more empowerment to do that, to take risks and try things. And like you said, it's not always going to work. I love that you made that point, because I think that's really important for social media teams in general to feel empowered to do that, or else this work isn't going to be successful.
Oh, absolutely hear you on that. And I think some of the things that you and your team did in your community was really great examples that we all picked apart in the space, and they were sharing with the digital state of the city. And we just really loved the Justin Timberlake thing and how your whole community got involved with just this very authentic style. And it resonated for you all very well. It is a highly skilled thing that social media professionals do. And it's so frustrating. I think we're progressing a little bit further than, or you're just playing on social media all day. And isn't that something that we can assign to an intern? But there's still so many communities and so much leadership and electeds that still feel that way. But it's not, it's a highly complex, very skilled role. What you said before was definitely true about how difficult it is now. Back in 2008, I had 2 platforms to grapple with. YouTube came along and LinkedIn as well. And we figured out how to leverage those a bit, but it was the main 2 for a long time. Now you have so many other platforms out there. You have a lot of decisions over if you stay on certain platforms, go to different platforms, and what political statements that's making. And not only do you have those platforms, you have the social media management tools for them, and then just this layer of tech over it. And now with AI and its prevalence in the content creator space, it's a very complex field. So anything that we can do to connect people together and give them the skills that they need. It's funny, when we took a look at some of the things that I recommended early on and throughout the years with social media have completely changed to what's happening. Horizontal video. But I remember that there was one time where I recommended that you should always use third person. If you ever used I in any statement on social, it was very clear that you weren't that skilled of a social media manager. And boy, have things changed to how it's that unpolished look, that conversational look, that just everyday people using I language and first person language. That's all the stuff that resonates now. So it changes over time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important, like you said, to think about if we spend, and even in communications from a government perspective, time on the people that are going to come to public meetings or the people that only come to a particular event, you're missing all the people that are just living their lives. But they're living their lives. And I can tell you one thing's for sure is that they're using social media daily. They're on their phone. I used to talk, when I started in Gilbert, they didn't even accept credit card payment for parks and recreation classes. And the average resident age was 32. Just this disconnect that happens in service delivery. And I think when we can bridge that gap, and it's a shame because I used to say, I think my team was relieved when we couldn't use TikTok anymore because it was one less platform they had to worry about. But I really thought that's such a missed opportunity for government because that's where the majority of people are getting their information and news. I know where I spend my time, and I'm a little older than the average resident age. And with all the complexities of that platform, I understand why, but I was a huge proponent trying until they really took it away, really shut us down, because that is a missed place to provide information where people are living their lives. I have 2 teenage daughters. They spend all their time on Snapchat and TikTok. And if government isn't there, we're missing that opportunity. And so talk to me about the future of Are you seeing the emergence of different platforms in use when you're at your conferences? I know you talked about like sessions changing and all of that, but how are you seeing the storytelling changing too over time? And where do you see it? You mentioned AI, obviously another big focus of mine too, because I do think that there's ways to enable this technology to help us to do our jobs in social media too, to make it easier. So you don't have to answer 200 comments, right? There's times where you can automate those responses, and there's other times where I need to know there's a person on that end. So how do you envision that playing out in the next few years?
Oh, things are evolving so quickly now. I remember the first time that we really had to grapple with sunsetting a social media platform was probably around the Google Plus era, where some government agencies tested it out. It didn't really go anywhere except for Google employees. We had to sunset it. But there's a lot of conversation about where Twitter, where X is going, and what do we do with those profiles? Do we move over to Blue Sky? Folks are really looking for a platform that has the features of X, where you can have quick updates. It really appeals to the news media. You can get out emergency alerts, and a lot of folks have a very large audience because they built it over a number of years on X. And so a big conversation over the past several months has been, do we transition over to Blue Sky? If you do, is it a political statement? A lot of government entities are working on reserving the handles for other social media platforms. Do we create a profile on more conservative scene platforms as well? There's a lot of opportunity, however, because if you take a look at platforms that have video and perform well, they have nowadays a consistency where they have video that on your mobile device goes full screen and you can swipe this way or that way and you can see your videos. And no matter what platform that is, there's some nuances between looking at it on TikTok or looking at the YouTube shorts or looking at the reels, but the essence of it is the same, that you could have these connected, going from one experience looking at a story to another experience looking at a story. And you just get so addicted. That is the type of thing that consumers want to see in social, because they feel really, it's something that they consume a lot of their time on. So whatever platforms come out in the future, if they have that component to it, they're going to be successful. I think as far as where things go in the future, it's unfortunately only going to get more complex for social goods. With AI, I think right now we're grappling with how much can we leverage it to be useful, and how much is it concerning to me as a communicator in replacing my job and what I do in the special aspect to my job that I bring. And I think where we're landing at right now with that is that it still has a need for that human touch, that human component, to know this is garbage that it spit out, or this is stuff that it spit out that I can use for social as well. So we're at the phase of trying to figure out how we can leverage it. And there's also a group of people who also are hesitant about AI because of the fact that they feel like it's cheating because you're using AI, when government communicators come up through the ranks and learn how to write and to tell stories and all of that. And this is cheating if you're just going to leverage that and post it on social. The other idea with AI is that it is trained on large language models that are taking works from authors all over at large scale. And is that something that is ethical to do, to leverage AI? Those are the conversations that we're seeing, and it's going to just continue, again, to get more complex if we look at chatbots on social. And we've had for a long time, we've had autoresponders where any agency can, or any business, anyone can add on their page where they have their hours and they can select between pre-planned questions. Now we're looking at getting way more sophisticated than that, and having some responses that interact with you. And just to sprinkle into the mix for the complexity is the fact that social media platforms, bless their hearts, they're not making it any easier with coming out with profiles that are completely AI driven or AI content and just AI comments as well. It's going to make it very difficult and is already making it difficult with misinformation and everybody just being able to discern what type of content is trustworthy and what is driven by AI.
You're right, because I think it's here. We have to embrace it. I'm just a big believer in that, to dive in and figure out how to make these tools work for us. Because again, if we don't evolve, we die. So we got to, like you said, to stay relevant, we have to be embracing these tools, and the government especially needs to. But I know we were criticized even when it actually was a person responding on social media. They would say, is this a person? Is this a human? And my social media manager, Lauren, would sign her name on posts all of the time. And then you suddenly didn't want to put your name on the posts anymore. And we were like, no signing your name. So it's that balance, right? It's, again, we keep using the word nuance, but I think that this is really important for people to understand how complicated this work is. So I'd also love to just get some info on you about building a business. I recently left the government space after more than a decade. I had been in private sector for a decade, then did government for a decade, and now I'm building a business, and I'm an entrepreneur, still in the government space primarily, but focused on this. So tell me, what advice do you have for me and our listeners and others about your work jumping off? I'm looking to you as someone who I admire, and you've really built something that's amazing and recognized and nationally recognized. I know it's not always easy, but what advice do you have, and maybe where do you see all of this going from here? And it's exciting.
First of all, I'm so thrilled that you've taken this step, and I think we're going to see great things coming from your shop. I also think that we need more strong women entrepreneurs who are successful and who share their learnings with others. One thing that I would say is that it was the lesson that I had to learn was not to say yes to everything. And sometimes you have to do that at the beginning, but start really understanding where your lane is. And at first, when you start, it's okay to dabble in all of the different things because you don't know what is going to be the best product market fit, what's going to resonate the best, what is going to be your thing. But once you decide that, double down on it, lean into it. And it's okay not to have, I've seen so many consultancies where they have a suite of 25 different products because they want to make sure that they have something for everyone's needs. And the thing is that everyone's always going to have a number of needs, but figure out what your specific lane is and double down on that. And don't be afraid to simplify. Once you simplify, then you're known for that thing. And as a brilliant marketer, that is something that's worth its weight in gold. And also finding opportunities. I would add a second thing to it. Finding opportunities to take a step back, especially as a entrepreneur when you're doing all of the things yourself at the beginning. You're so deeply involved in the weeds and every single nuance of your business. But if you find and make those spaces to take a step back, you can solve some of those big challenges that you have that you can't see because you're so far in the weeds. So just take some time to take a step back.
I think that's great advice. This will not be the last time I ask you this. This is only the first. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kristy, for having this conversation. It's such a pleasure to talk with you, and congratulations on all of your success. And I'm so happy to chat with someone like you in this space. There are not many, I feel, that truly get it. And so I love to have these conversations, amplify each other's voices and work. And so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ojai Stories podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. And visit our website at ohaicommunications.com.